Spiffy. See if I can kill my battery. Time on my mind. Okay. I'm going to slide over here now because that's just weirding me out. So, I'm sure a lot of you know me from my booth over in the art show. I've been doing that for 8 years now. My name is Dave Cain. I make chainmail for a living. I've been doing it as a hobby for 18 years now. Professionally for about 10. Started out in the armor business. Found out there's not much money in the armor business. Switched over to jewelry because the way I look at it is, not many people need armor. Among the people who need armor, there's not many who can afford it. And if you do find that magical combination, they only ever need one suit of armor. But I've never met a woman who has too much jewelry. So, important business epiphany. I have my own ring cutter. If you were at my panel last year, you saw it. I brought it, and a lot of people took pictures, and it was neat, and it spent a lot of my time, so I didn't have to come up with more content. But this year, what I'd like to talk to you guys about is Byzantine chain weaving, which I'm sure some of you at least know or at least heard of, how to do it, and how to do it quickly. And beyond that, I'm going to talk a lot about speed weaving, various patterns. I'll do a couple of demonstrations, and if you guys have questions, just let me know, and if I've got the rings and I've got the time, I'll do it for you. That's why I set up the camera, so you can see my hands while I work. So, we will start with Byzantine chain. See if I can get the camera. Where's the camera at on this thing? There it is. This is Byzantine chain. I'm sure most of you know this, have seen it before, at least. Even if you don't know how to make it, that's Byzantine chain. And this is all in one color. This is a chain pattern that has been around for at least 2,500 years, probably longer. It's one of those patterns that it dates back to at least pre-Roman times, probably earlier, but the problem is, as one society would conquer another, they'd melt down their crap and make something else with it. So if it was made of gold and silver, it probably got melted down. If it was made of iron, it's probably rusted into a lump by now. So much more than 2,500 years ago, it's hard to find good examples. But yeah, this predates Roman times, even though we call it Byzantine chain because the Romans like naming things. It's actually, to best of my knowledge, Celtic in its origin. So this is one color. That's what it looks like when it's made with one color, and rings that are slightly larger than I normally make for jewelry, because it's a little loose like this. You'll see the rings on the end kind of flop. If they're sized correctly, they don't do that. But I did a big one so you guys could see it a little bit better for the demonstration. And to make it a little more obvious, this is the exact same chain, exact same length, exact same ring size, done with two colors. These alternate. So there's a silver, a brown, silver, brown, the way that Byzantine is assembled. So you see there's like little brown ones there, little silver ones there. I know this isn't exactly the most ideal, but it's better than me going, hey, can you all see this? And I'm going to grab some rings out of my box here if I can find them. That one and that one. For the demonstration, I'm using 18 gauge rings, made backwards, that are 4.25 millimeters in diameter. That's a little bit bigger than I normally work with. With 18 gauge wire, I usually use 3.75 millimeter. A little bit smaller, a little bit tighter, fits better. So, the way most books will show you how to make Byzantine chain is actually more difficult than doing it quickly. So, the way it's normally done in a book is you close two rings. Bear with me, this is a little bit slow, but pardon my grubby pliers. You can tell these have gotten a lot of wear. See where my finger's gone right through the rubber there? And right there? Yeah, I used to have two pairs of these, and the other one broke right along the jaw, right in that line. So I got the big fat pair and the skinny pair to give me a little bit of work. There's something to work with. So I've closed two rings, and now I've opened the ring, put those two rings on there. You see that? And then close it. Actually, let me stop real quick. I'm going to do this with the brown so you can see it a little bit better, so you can understand how I'm being tricky. Okay, so brown. Antique copper, for fancy words. Can everyone hear me, by the way? I'm not talking into the microphone, but I figure this room's small enough so everyone can hear me. So, pick up a brown one, because alternating, just like you saw on that chain right there. So, I pick those two up with a brown ring, close the brown ring. Take another brown ring, open it up, catch those two silver ones again, And so essentially, we're doubling the chain. This is a double loop chain, or double ring chain. You see that? 2 silver, 2 brown. And now, we'll do 2 silver again, because we're alternating. Silver. Just dump these out, it'll be a little easier. And silver. And so we're continuing to make a double linked chain. See that? 2 silver, 2 brown, 2 silver. And here's where it becomes a Byzantine chain. We open up a brown one, take the silver. This is going to be a little tricky on a camera like this, but see, 2 silver, 2 brown, 2 silver. I flip the 2 silver back. Can you see how that's done? The 2 silver are flipped, and the 2 brown ones are exposed. The 2 silver ones, you pinch them up like that. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And you take the next hook and you catch the back side of the 2 silver ones you flipped. I'm going to close it, and then I'm going to give you a better look at it. So, like that. See how that works? The silver got flipped, and the ring got fed through it. Does that make sense to everyone? So I'm sure a lot of you already know Byzantine, so this is a little bit of a refresher. But so, you put one more brown ring in, because Byzantine is a double loop chain. And this, now, is a completed half Byzantine segment. See? 2 there, 2 there. So, I know that's a little bit weird to look at on this camera, but that is a double looped Byzantine. That's a half Byzantine done the standard way. Now, the way you continue in the standard ways that you make Byzantine is you put 2 more silver rings, 2 more brown rings, flip it, silver rings. 2 more rings, flip it, connect. 2 more rings, flip it, connect. On and on till you're done. Now, that's actually a lot more complicated than it has to be. That's the way almost every book does it, and it's too complicated. So to speed this up, you're welcome. I made a couple of pre-made chains here. This one, you'll see, is 2 brown, 2 silver, 2 brown, 2 silver, 2 brown, like that. And this is the quick way to do Byzantine. You take a chain like this. This is 10 rings, 5 doubled. And open up a ring. And remember the flipping I did on the last part? I'm flipping the brown ones this time. See how they're flipped over? That's kind of hard, but you see how they're flipped over? You pinch them up like that. You separate the 2 silver ones so you can see where the brown ones come apart. You see where the brown ones are peeking through from the silver? A little losing resolution there. You catch the silver one like that. You see? I caught the back side of the brown ones. You close it. And you do another silver one in exactly the same spot, which is easier after the first one because you've got the first one to guide you. So, right through, like I know what I'm doing. There we go. And it doesn't look good yet because it's still open. But you close it up, and you can see how you've got that Byzantine flip now. See? And then you do the exact same thing on the other side, and you've got a full segment of Byzantine. I'm not going to do it on this yet, because if you're just making single pieces of Byzantine to make like my segmented Byzantine bracelet, available for $30 on my table, you just make segments of Byzantine, then you connect them with bigger rings. That's how it's done. But if you want to make a single chain of Byzantine, that's how you start one end. Now, you fold over the brown ones like you saw me do. Can you see it? If at any point no one can see what I'm doing, just holler, because I'll hold this here for 10 minutes if I have to. Open that up. Catch that. Don't close it yet. This is where it gets a little tricky. So you see what I did. Caught the back side of those brown ones that are wiggly. Too much caffeine in my system. And then you take another one that I just happen to have ready that is done exactly the same way. 10 rings like that. Flip the silver one over, just like I did on this one. and connect it the same way. You catch, sorry, I'm off the camera there. Catch those two silver ones the same way I caught the two brown ones on the other one. So, you see how that's connected there? Close that ring, and because it's Byzantine, you always do two, because Byzantine is a double link chain. I'm going to say that 50 or 60 more times. And you close that up. What'd I do?
There's like a raucous cry of, yeah!
Yeah! So, I kind of mirrored those so the browns and the silvers are alternating, but those two brown ones are the ones I just put in. So you see how that continues the chain? And now you take this one, put a ring through it the exact same way. You see in this one, the brown ones are flipped over and the silver ones are peeking through. Catch those two silver ones where they're peeking through, like that. And then take the other one that's laying here somewhere. There it is. Flip it. And again, the two rings opened up. Catch the back side of those rings. Get in there. And I'm not going to put the second ring in, but you get the idea. So that's how you make a Byzantine chain quickly. You do a bunch of little double rings, 10 ring, double fived, and just after you've made as many as you need, you flip them, connect, you flip, connect, you flip, connect. Very fast that way. If you do it one ring at a time the way I showed you at first, you saw how slow that is. And it's actually more complicated because you've got to keep track of it better. This, it's just flip, connect, flip, connect, flip, connect till you're done. So that's how you speed weave Byzantine. Does anyone have any questions about that? Anyone? Anyone? Okay. I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick on speed weaving European 4-in-1 chainmail as well. You've seen this a million times. It's your Lord of the Rings chainmail. Yes. What he's making right there. They call this European 4-in-1 because, surprisingly enough, every ring connects to 4 other rings. This is all in one color to confuse you good. And then, here's one in the 2 colors. You see the brown and the silver. It makes it a little more obvious when you look at one brown one, you can see 4 silver ones connected to it. Can you see that? Shut up! So, that is what European 4-in-1 looks like. You put 30, 40,000 of those together, you got a shirt. It's that easy. The way this is generally taught how to do, and I'm only going to do a little bit because I don't want to bore you completely, is you've got a piece, and we're going to assume you've already started, and you spent 3 hours on this little chunk here. And you go, okay, you see how there's the brown one there, and it's already connected to 4. See the 4 silver ones I'm holding in my fingers with that one brown one at the top? So, you would take the right color, which would be brown. Pretend I did that right the first time. And hook those 2 silver ones. So I'm not used to doing this way out in front in the camera here, so I'm normally not this clumsy, I promise. So you see how I hooked that onto those 2 silver ones? And then you'd connect it to 2 more silver ones, like that. That's one quick way to do it. The way most books will show you to do it is close that brown one, try not to fall asleep, get another brown one, go over here, connect. Again, you see how there's a brown one there and there's 2 silver ones sticking up? You connect that brown one to those, you see? And you do that across, all the way across, and then you come back and do the same thing in silver. So, you see where the 2 brown ones are sticking up? You'd put the silver one through, like that. Boy, I should have shaved this morning, shouldn't I? So that's how you do, that's the standard way you do European 4-in-1. There's a much quicker way, and this is how I do it fast. I take, for the sake of the example here, I'm going to do this in 2 colors, but I start, in this particular example, with silver. I'm going to close 12 rings real quick. Talk amongst yourselves while I bore you here. Totally should have had that on my phone. I'll remember that the next time I'm here to bore you to tears. So, said.
While you're doing that, what got you into doing chainmail?
I wanted a shirt. I'm a giant nerd. And
Popular answers ever.
exactly. Back in 1995, I was visiting a friend's house, and she had a dressmaker's dummy with a chainmail shirt on it. And I was like, that's so cool. And she's like, yeah, you're a nerd. And her son had made it. And I said, how do you do that? And she's like, I don't know, figure it out. And gave me a piece that he'd given up on that was a piece of brass and copper chainmail. And I ended up setting up all night just prying it apart with my fingers, figuring it out. Because it was copper, I could do that. It was really soft. It rings like this big, because that's really going to give you perspective on the screen. Rings like that big. I am a professional, I promise. And I tore it apart, put it back together, tore it apart, put it back together, screwed it up, put it back together, and finally figured it out. That's how I figured out how to do original European foreign one. I keep looking up, I keep looking down. Just look at me when I'm talking.
Which one?
You're confusing me. So, the way I speed weave European foreign one, I've made 12 little closed silver rings here. And now, brown ring. I pick up 4 silver rings, like so, close the brown ring. Open a brown ring, pick up 4 silver rings, close the brown ring. Ta-da! Do that again. And that's all 12 of the silver rings accounted for, like so. Now, each one of these, 1 brown, 4 silver. The thing you're going to remember from this is if you look really close, you'll notice that from your perspective, the silver is kind of pointed upward and the brown is kind of pointed downward. Do you see that? That's the pattern in European foreign one. It's a slant. 1 row goes up, 1 row goes down, 1 row goes up, 1 row goes down. So, to do this for speed weaving, we do that, and then I'm going to another brown ring, catch 2 from that, waiting for the color to catch up. That's why I wore a black shirt. I thought of that ahead of time. And catch 2 more, and then do the other one the exact same way onto that chain. Screwed that ring up. Even I screw up rings still. Tens of millions of rings into it. And 2 more on this one. So, what you see here is a chain made of 1 brown ring, 2 silver. 1 brown, 2 silver. 1 brown, 2 silver. You see that? Okay. Now I'm going to make another one, and we're going to distract ourselves while I close 12 more silver rings. Any other questions while I'm doing this?
Do you ever weld the rings shut or anything?
Occasionally. When I'm doing sterling silver, I will solder. I don't do much welding specifically because I don't really work in steel or aluminum as much as I used to, because mostly with jewelry. This particular material you see here is an enameled copper. This is a silver-plated copper ring with an enamel on it that makes it almost impossible to damage the surface. It's crazy strong stuff. You see my bracelet here? Available for $150 at my table. This one's 3 years old. And you'll see that the finish, how shiny it is, you kind of need to see it in person to really understand, but that is just as shiny as the new one that's sitting on my table. You can screw it up if you take sandpaper or a file or something like that to it, but just standard wear and tear, beating on it with a hammer, you won't hurt it. I actually have a wire artist friend who's a wire wrap guy, not a chainmail guy. He's not as cool as we are. And he, almost everything he does, he flattens with a hammer after he's done. And it's the exact same wire company, exact same product, and he never has any problems with it. So that's kind of how I got onto this material, was that I saw what kind of torture he put his wire to, and it still held its finish. I was like, say, I need some of that. So, I have closed 12 more silver rings, and I'm going to do exactly what I did there again, which is fumble twitchily because I have too much caffeine in my system. Grab 4 silver rings, close it with a brown one. 4 silver rings, close it on a brown one. 4 silver rings, This is beginning to sound like a head-on commercial.
Can you hear me now?
And then I will attach them together again, the way I did the other one. One more ring. And we have an identical chain to the last one. You see, there's the camera. One brown one, two silver ones, done exactly the same way. Now, I'm going to try and move the camera so you can see this part, because I can't really hold this one up in the air and show you. You can get this out of the way so we're not confusing our visuals here. Now, on this, where am I at? Over here. There we go. Those are the two chains I just made. I know it's a little blurry, but can you see how the brown ones are pointed down and the silver ones are pointed up? You lay it out like that, and then you connect it. Now I'm going to do that in the air because you can see that. There we go. 5 minutes of adjusting. There we go. Now, I'm going to open up a brown one so I can do this quickly. You see, in the air here, so I get my fingers on it, pliers down to make it a little easier. Fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. Blah, blah, blah. There we go. So, line up you. You see how I've got the brown ones and the silver ones lined up there. What I do, brown ring, end of this chain where I've got one ring, I'm catching the two top silver ones where you've got the brown one, can't really do that from that way, brown one pointed up, silver one's pointed down, in my face. Yours is silvers are pointed up, the brown is pointed down. So you see how this one is connected the same way the bottom brown one is. Can you see that? So you've got that, and now you take the other one, make sure it's aligned the same way, so in mine the brown is up, but for you the brown is downward, and you connect it exactly the same way, theoretically. There we go. Like that. So the brown one is in, you guessed it, 4 rings. European 4-in-1. So you close it, and what you get, I'm going to hold it this way because you can see it a little bit better, is the completed connection. 3 of them there. Let's hold it like that. Let's hold it away from my fingers so you can actually see it. There we go. See how those 3 brown ones are in there now? And you do the same thing to the next brown ones, which I'm going to do so you can see it a little bit better. And that's how I do European 4-in-1 to do it quickly. I make these big long 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 chains, and then I weave those 2-1, 2-1 chains together into, well, 4-3, 4-3 chain at this point. And then once I have a bunch of those, I weave those together, and it gets bigger and bigger. And the reason I do this is the bigger a piece of chainmail gets, the harder it is to manage in your lap or on your table or whatever you're doing. It gets heavier, it gets unwieldy, it wants to fall out of your pliers. So if you can work with smaller pieces one at a time and slowly add them into a big piece, it works a lot better. It makes your life a lot easier.
How big do you make your squares? When you, like, let's say you're doing your shirt.
Normally, when I do a shirt, I will go 8 rings across and 8 rings up. So it ends up being 113 rings, if I remember right, when you attach all together. And in my brain lexicon, I call that a patch. And so when I'm making a shirt, I'll make a big old pile of those patches. And once I'm done making patches and I've got my size figured out, I'll start attaching the patches together. And you might have to make a half patch or a little bit smaller pieces, depending on how you're fitting it. I'm more entertaining, damn it. But, yeah, the whole idea there is you make like 100 of those little patches, and then you've got a shirt, and you just kind of patch them together. So I'm putting the last ring in this, and closing it up, and it makes a little more sense now that you can see where those brown rings are. Does that make sense to you guys now? Do you see what I did? So, to make this bigger, one more row, one more row, one more row, and you can make it as long as you want, but this is just a slightly smaller because there's one more row. version of the one I showed you as an example earlier. That's how you do it. So, those are the two main speed weaving things I wanted to show you guys today. As far as anything else, if you have questions, let's talk. Anything chainmail you want to know, I might have an answer, or I can probably fake it. You with the tie first.
I just got a question.
Yeah.
Is that your personal preference for making that? Have you tried making the lines at the 90 instead of...
I have, and I occasionally do that. And what he's talking about with that is if I were to make a chain that was, this is going to be really hard to show, but like without those brown ones, the silver, brown, silver, you see that? Making a big long chain that way, then making a big long chain that way, and attaching them, that works just fine too. It's the same kind of concept where you make a smaller piece and attach it to a bigger piece. I just prefer it this way. So what you're talking about is pretty much just as fast. It's just a matter of personal preference. Next question. You.
Do you ever work with scale mail?
Now, I make my own rings, and I'm very, very picky about that. I will get rings from the ring lord if I really want to do anodized aluminum, because that's just too big a pain in the ass to do your own rings. But I make my own. And scale, you can't make your own. And I just don't like using prefabricated pieces that much. With jewelry, I have to buy clasps because it's just impractical for me to, see, like with this bracelet here. This is called a slide lock clasp. It's got a little tube like that. Little tube like that with a seam in it. And the way it goes together is that lines up and goes like that. I can make those. It'll take me an hour a piece. Giant waste of my time. I buy them. But that's about the only thing I buy are findings, because there's no practical way to make them quickly. For scales, I mean, it's cool and I like it, and it's a great visual effect. It's just a lot of other people do it. And there's only so much you can do with scale. Scale gets really attached one or two different ways. I mean, I know that there's creativity there. And I know there's ways you can do it. But for me, it's just, there's not enough I can play with. Rings, I can do every color, every size, every shape. I can make anything out of chainmail. Scale, I can kind of make sheets or I can make flowers. And it just doesn't interest me. Who else has a question? You.
So, where do you get those findings?
These findings, I believe this one came from Fire Mountain Gems. There's a couple of companies that import that I get them from, because the unfortunate truth of it is you can't buy these clasps made in America. I wish you could, because I prefer American-made stuff. The wire comes from New Jersey. All of that, I know where that comes from, but I have to get most of the clasps from China, because they just don't make them in the U.S. I'm still looking. If I run into one, I'll buy them from them, but until then I have to import. You. Yes, you.
How do you make the rings?
You weren't at my panel last year, were you? You gave it away. The way I make rings is I have a set of mandrels, which are fancy word for a rod, that go from 2 millimeters up to 8 millimeters in 1/4 millimeter increments. So 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2 on up. I take that rod and I stick it into the chuck of a power drill. Take the wire, stick it into the chuck, crank up the drill. Makes a big long spring. And then I have a cutter. That's why I asked about my panel, because I brought the cutter last year to show people. And it's basically a table saw made to cut rings. Saw blade, I'm not going to do it in the camera this time, it's about this big, and the blade is about as thick as maybe 2 sheets of paper. It's called a slotting saw blade. If you ever look for one in like a equipment catalog, it's a slotting saw blade. And they make them in all different shapes and sizes. And so I have a gadget that has a adjustable table so that I can get the height compared to my coils, and I feed the coils through and the rings fall out the other side. After that, I clean them up and then I weave them together. With silver or precious metals, I usually put them through a rock tumbler to polish them for usually an hour or two after I've cut them, because it not only makes them shinier, it makes the metal a lot harder. It makes the surface more durable. If you're working with sterling silver, gold, stuff like that, that is not coated, because like I said, this has a coating on it, after you've cut it, you really should burnish it. That's what you're doing when you run it through a rock tumbler. And you don't even have to put anything in the rock tumbler, a little water, maybe a little Dawn dishwashing liquid. But you put the rings in, and they just tumble and tumble and tumble, and they bang against themselves, and they harden the surface of the metal, which polishes it and takes off the microscopic little pocks that form when the little dents when the wire is formed originally. And so burnishing kind of compresses the surface, makes it shinier, harder, and it'll be nice and shiny, and it'll stay shiny. When it's polished, it'll shine easier. So that's just, with precious metals, you always do that because you save yourself hours and hours and hours and hours of trouble cleaning the metal later on. More questions? Yes?
Say you're making like a chainmail like glove.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of your fingertips, is there like a special way to like spherically make it? Or?
There's a way to do that it's related to European 4-in-1. If you guys want me to, I'll demonstrate it. It doesn't take long. You guys cool with that? Okay. I'm going to do that with the silver and brown ones again so you can see the color contrast. This is expanding 4-in-1 round mail. The way you do it is, the way I do it at least, is there's a factor of 4 involved. I'm going to close 8 of these little brown rings to begin with so you can see what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3, the most exciting part of the show. Fortunately, I'm pretty quick at this. By the way, if you've not done much chainmail and you're still kind of figuring out, this is the way I close rings. I put it, you see how I've got a pretty good chunk of the ring in the plier there? I don't, when you see demonstrations in magazines, you see this. Never, ever, ever close a ring like that. Because what happens is you get all, and it distends the shape of the ring. The way to do it is to grab like a third, and this is a little bit of personal preference, size the ring, size your pliers. Grab a good chunk of the ring there. Take the other plier, get like half the ring, and you kind of just hinge and bend. It's very slight. And the whole reason you do that is you don't want the ring, when it lays flat, to be like, whoop, because you didn't close it evenly. This guy knows what I'm talking about. But it's one of those things, if you're just starting, you don't know. And you'll get really confused, and you'll be like, well, the lady in the magazine does it like this, and it just can't. Don't do it like that. They do that. The only reason they do that is because you could see the ring better in a photograph. Fortunately, it's not something they're actually trying to teach you. It's just, it's better for photography. But they often don't explain that as a result. So, anyway, that ate up the time I needed to close 8 rings there. So, silver ring. I'm going to pick up all 8 of those rings. This is going to be the center of our expanding round mail. And this is a little bit crowded, so 8 rings, 1 silver. That's how I start. I always start with 8 because it makes my math easy. And now what I'm going to do, and this is going to be a little hard to show on the camera, but we'll do what I can here. Next row will be silver, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to assemble these the way you assemble European 4-in-1. So what I'm doing, you see how, get my own hand out of my way there, I'm holding the rings so they all point upward to you. For me, they're downward, but upward to you. I'm hooking a silver one into 2 of them, after I open it enough, because I'm a dumbass. There we go. To grab 2 rings. That's just like you do with European 4-in-1. And I'm going to go around the circle and essentially make another row in silver. So, again, I'm holding it so that you see the brown ones are up for you, silver ones down for you. So the next silver one connects to the first brown one I used and the next open one. So that's 2.
So now that brown one's captured in both the silver.
Correct.
Okay.
So, as you can see, I've got, there we go, 1 more silver one. And you can see that as I go here, you've got the middle silver one holding each of the brown ones, and the silver one on the outside is going to connect each to 2, creating the 4-in-1 pattern, which will make more sense when I'm done. So, that's 3 of them. The next one, 4. Again, I'm making sure the rings are slanting the same direction for each connection, because that is what will screw you up and confuse you if you don't do it right. Almost there. La la la. Sing a song.
Would you do this to start a headpiece as well?
Yes.
Starting from the top of the
I
head?
do this for fingertips, I do this for headpieces, I do this for dice bags, anything round. That's how I always put the bottom on a round dice bag. So, 1 more ring and this will be done. This is the tricky one. If you didn't do it right, you're going to be really confused here because the silver ones won't line up. So, get you in there. Da-da-da, there we go. So, this is going to be a little bit hard to show, but there's a row of silver ones that are, you see how they all kind of point for you in this direction here. They go around the circle pointing in the same direction. Does that make sense? Follow me so far? Okay, so there are now 8 silver ones in there to match the 8 brown ones. Here's how you expand it out to make it round. You take those 8 silver ones you put in there, and now you take 4 more silver ones, and this is what you do. Pick a random spot, doesn't matter to start with. So I've got one where I've got 2 silver ones there and a brown one. I hook another silver one in there. So it's only hooked to one brown one. Follow me? And because I'm adding 4 to 8 to make it 12, I'm going to, there's the one I just added. You see it? Because it's only got one brown one on it. I skip 1, 2, and I'm going to connect another silver one right there. Okay? You see how that's connected to one brown one? Like that? I'm going to skip 1, 2, and connect another silver one to a single brown one there. We're going around and doing that to 4 to make the silver row be 12 rings instead of 8. That's how we expand it. Because you could continue doing that and it would get spherical very quickly. So I put that one in, 1, 2, and then the last silver ring. So, to recap, what we got here, middle ring that is silver. Stop twitching. There we go. 8 brown ones. Pull this back a little bit, maybe see a little better. And there are 12 silver ones. The 12 silver ones correspond to the 8 brown, the 8 brown ones, 2 ring at a time, and then I added 4 that are individually on one ring. Does this make sense? Yes. Okay. So, we've got a row of 8 and a row of 12. Now, I'm going to take the brown ones, because they're the next row, and put 12 brown ones in. The exact same way you assemble European foreign ones. So you've got the, to your perspective, the silver ones are pointed downward and the brown ones are pointed upward. So, 2 at a time, just like that. I'm going to go around the circle, and this gets a little slower as it expands.
Where are the single ones located in relation to the ones that you're hooking right now?
They'll go right into the mix. I'll show you, because I think the next one is a single one. Oh, no, right there. See, I put 2 brown ones in already. That silver one in the middle is one of the singles.
Oh.
So you pretend like they're connected to everything else just the way they are. So that's how it expands out. And I'm going to just kind of try and do this quick so I don't waste all your time doing this one.
Can you use the method to make a hacky sack?
Yes, that's exactly how they're made. The hacky sack, anything round, this is what it's done. This is how it's done. And I strongly recommend doing the 4 rule the way I'm doing it because it makes your math much, 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 much easier. And if you guys have more questions about this later on, because I know this is a little bit hard to see on a camera, you can always email me or drop by my booth and ask me questions. I can't do too much demo at my booth because, like I said, I don't have my assistant. But I'm happy to answer questions later on. And if this is in any way legible when it's done, I'm going to clip it together and put it on YouTube so you have a demo video. Or if it doesn't look very good, I'll get a better camera and do it at home where you can actually see it better. Okay, where am I at? I'm almost there. So, you go 12 brown rings around the outside to correspond to the 12 silver rings that are in the last row. And where am I? There I am. These are a little smaller than I usually do for the expanding, so I'm fumbling slightly. And in case I haven't mentioned, I have too much caffeine in my system.
Dragoncon, everybody does.
I bought a case of Monster at Sam's Club on my way into town, and I don't know if they're going to make it to Monday. Well, I used to work in coffee shops, so I have a very, very high tolerance. Okay, there's the last one. So, 12 brown ones are on the outside. You know how it looks kind of square right now? That's because the way those silver ones lay, it makes it look square. So, we've got a row, we have the single ring in the middle, we got a row of 8 brown ones, then a row of 12 silver ones, and now 12 brown ones on the outside, and as you may have guessed, we're about to add 4 more rings to it to make this a row of 16. And the way we do that, this is a little trickier, but you see, if I can get it on the camera there, the 2 silver ones that are closest to my fingers on the top row are single-linked silver ones. The 2 in the middle were the ones that were connected to 2 rings to begin with. To start my brown ones, I'm going to pick one of those because it'll just make the shape a little weird otherwise. So, because we have a row of 12 now and we're inserting 4, we skip 3 rings instead of 2 to do this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, if I can get this thing to line up, and go from this way. There we go. So, I try not to put it directly on one of the new rings from the last row because it'll make it kind of go weird. But okay, so I picked one, put it in there. Now I skip 3, put another one in there. There we go. Skip 3 again. Put it in there. And skip 3 more. And put that in there. If you did it right, there should be a gap of 3 and one of the single ones. I did it right. So now that row is 16 rings. Now, I'm not going to do any more than this because it's going to get real boring. But the next step is to do a row of 16 rings of silver around the outside, work 4 more in, skip 4 instead of 3, and now you've got a row of 24. Do it again, you've got a row of 28 up to 5, row of 32 at 6, and after you start skipping 7 rings, I add 8 instead of 4. So it's an expanding sort of exponential thing. If you play with it and you experiment with it, it'll make a lot more sense because the way it lays makes more sense. So you see, this looks a little bit square right now because it's just starting, but as it gets bigger, it very much rounds out. And so if you're talking about something like a hacky sack, you'll do this to half a sphere, and then you do the other half, and bam, you're done. Or you can, little big, little like that, however you like assembling it. But that's how hacky sacks are done. That's how quoits are done. That's how fingertips are done. That's how dice bags are done. Anything with a round chainmail with a traditional European foreign one, that's how the round is done.
Question.
Yes?
When you make a mistake in your foundation, how fast do you realize a mistake is there, or can you cover it up as you keep going around? For
me?
Yeah.
I don't make mistakes.
Okay, when you watch somebody else make a mistake.
I usually catch them pretty quick because there'll be some sort of weird math going on. Because like with this one, like I'll do the row of 8, and if I screwed something up when I start putting the 2, I put 1 in, skip 2, put 1 in, skip 2, it won't, I'll go like 1 and there'll be a ring, I'll be like, the hell? And then I'll go back and figure it out.
Double something, or can you?
Yeah.
You just.
I go back, I take it apart. I mean, that's...
Okay, so you do...
Oh, yes. When it's done, it's perfect.
Well,
until it's done, yes.
Some things don't need to be perfect. So,
my
chainmail writer.
Yes, Howard.
Obviously, for like a koi, if you're going to
Yeah.
go wide, but something you're talking about fingertips. I mean, how many of those expanding rows would you normally go for something just for a fingertip?
Depends on the size of ring you're using.
Okay.
If you're using this size of ring, that's probably enough.
So,
And then once you get, that's something I should have clarified, once you get expanded as far as you want, you just assemble it the way you would European foreign ones. So this one, like I said, that brown row, the last one, has 16 rings in it. So if you don't want to expand anymore, now you want to make it into a cylinder, you do 16 rings of silver, 16 rings of brown, 16 rings of silver, 16 rings of brown, and it just makes a cylinder. In the back.
Once you get to the bottom of your fingertip, how are you going to make the U shape? Would you do like the vice versa of that? And just flip it over?
You mean where the ring, where this comes together? Actually, right where this comes together, you would probably just do standard European, well, okay, yeah, I see what you mean, because they're all going in this direction. Because I haven't done a glove in a really long time. I got to think about that for a minute. Generally speaking, when you put one like this together, unless you're doing shark mail, and they've got a machine that does that, you're going to have a slight gap here, and you're going to have to kind of fudge it, depending on exactly how those rings come together, and it's really an individual situation. It's going to depend on what it looks like, how your fingers come together, because if you're using rings like this big, which you're probably not for a glove, your fingers are only going to come that close together before you're smashing into wire. But you kind of got to fudge it. And so when those rings come down there, you'll sort of see it. If you're used to 4-in-1, you'll see, okay, there's 2 rings laying this way, 2 rings laying that way. I'll put a ring in there. Okay, that'll work. But yeah, there's a fudge factor when it comes to the between the fingers step, definitely. Any questions? Yes?
What's the smallest gauge you find you can work with?
Smallest thing I have worked with on a regular basis is 28 gauge wire, 2mm rings. I don't do that very often because I still have my sanity. I do work with 2mm rings, but I have some that are 22 gauge wire, which is what, 0.65 millimeters for you metric types? 0.65, yeah. So it's very fine. In fact, I have some here. No, where are you at? There we go. This is a 22 gauge ring that is 3.75 millimeters in diameter. It's used to make my star earrings, available for $35 a pair in my booth. I know how big that looks on this camera, but you see how tiny that is. And that's the...
Other rings to compare this.
Yes. Thank you. For comparison, it's my friend Jane. She's helping me. The rings I've been doing demos with, that's one of the brown ones. So you can see difference in size.
Wow.
And let me find the smallest one here so you can be very impressed. There we go. In one of the same colors. This is the 22 gauge 2 millimeter ring of legend. So
Do you wear special glasses for that when you're working those?
I'm very nearsighted, so it actually works out. So this is the 2 millimeter ring. This is the 4.25 that I've been doing demos with. See? Exactly.
But with the smaller ring size, you can get kind of a more flexible
It has a lot to do with how you want things to come together. And like with the earrings that I was just describing and selling to you, they're this big. I make pendants that are that big, and I do that in 18 millimeter rings, and it's actually a standard mathematic ratio to go from an 18 millimeter, which is a 1 millimeter wire, 1.01 blah, 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 blah. It's 1 millimeter. Save yourself some effort. If you take a pattern that you figured out, and you've got it in a 1 millimeter wire, and it's like, hey, this looks beautiful, but I want to make it in 22 gauge wire. The way you figure out your ring size is you take that 1 millimeter, because that's a nice standard and makes math easy, and you've got the 22 gauge, which is 0.65 millimeter diameter wire. So if you've got a ring that works in 1 millimeter, you multiply by 0.65, now you've got the diameter for the smaller wire. You may have to fudge a little bit because sometimes you'll get 27 decimals, and they don't make mandrels like that. But you can figure it out from there. That's the key. Questions? Who else has one? You.
How do you maintain the right angles in that Byzantine you do in like the necklace and the bracelet?
The right angles?
Yeah, they look like a diamond when you've put it back together.
Do you mean what the thing I was just showing you, or one?
No, in some of your pieces of jewelry.
Oh, on my table.
They zigzag.
The one that's a web.
Yes.
Okay, I'll show you that.
It says it's Byzantine.
Mm-hmm, it
in
is.
the decor, but
It
somehow
is.
you've maintained right angles in that.
This is a big trade secret, so don't tell anyone. The trick to this, I'm going to take apart this sample so I can do it quicker. If I can find the seam. Man, I'm good at this. I can't find the seam. There we go. There we are. And the seam here. The trick to that is that a standard unit of Byzantine is made of 2 rings, 2 rings, 2 rings, 2 rings. So, when you have the end piece, you have 2 rings on the end. The standard way to continue your Byzantine chain is to just continue right off of that. But if you take this ring and take, so you can't see that. I'm going to just push the plier in between so you can see it a little bit better. There we are. If you take one ring, grab another ring, and build a Byzantine off of that, and you take this ring, add another ring on the side, and build a Byzantine off of that, that's how you make the web. And I'm going to do one real quick, I promise, to show you. I disassembled these pieces so it would be quicker to do. So what I've got here is one of those chains I showed you at the beginning of the demo. There will be a quiz, so I hope you're taking notes. 10 chain. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 10. Got it? And we take this Byzantine, because I'm just going to take one that's already assembled, and you've got one ring here. I'm going to open one ring like that, and I'm going to flip that Byzantine. Flip that Byzantine. There we go. Yeah, let's do it with this one. Flip it open, just like I was showing you earlier. So you got it flipped over. You take the one ring that I've opened at the end of this chain. That's not a good angle. One ring, that one, and you catch this with it. Okay? Now, if I was doing a standard assembly, I would take that other ring, the one that's kind of floppy there, attach it to that, and be done. But because I'm making a web, what I'm going to do is take this one, and because I've only got one attached right there, take a ring, grab another piece, stick it through, doing this quick, and attach that through there. So, what you get is a fork effect. You see with that? Does that make sense? Can you see it?
And
So
you've got to reinforce each one of those with another ring.
Eventually, I mean, at the end, if this was the end of the piece, I would take a ring, close it on there, and that would just be on its own, if that's the end of the piece. See it? It's the floppy one right there. That's the one, the brown one right there I just put on. So, you take a Byzantine, and instead of just closing it on the end, you attach a Byzantine here and a Byzantine here. And then you go to here, and you put a Byzantine on that one, then you put a Byzantine on that one, and you put a Byzantine on that one, and that's how it works. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
So that's the trick. Don't tell anyone. More questions. Who else has questions? Someone's got a question. Don't make me talk for 10 minutes. You don't want to.
How long does it take you, like, say, to make that bracelet that you're wearing on average? How long does it take you to...
Any guesses?
3 days.
5 hours?
90 minutes. This one I've been doing a lot, and I've gotten really fast at it as a result. It's one of those, the first one I made took me several days. Then the next one took me about a day. And then the next one took me a couple hours. And I've got it down to where I could just be like, and chug the monster.
Your own personal sweatshop.
Yes.
Chugging the case of monster helps.
Yes. You gotta put, I can do one-handed stuff and just...
One-handed.
Can someone tell me what time it is? Because I don't want to fall off this... 42? We got 15 minutes. Cool. What is your question? This pattern is called elf weave because we're all nerds. I am not exactly sure of the pathology of this particular one because it's sort of modern, and it sort of assembles the way a Persian weave, like a half Persian weave does, but not quite. It's very zigzag, and then European, then zigzag. It's very strange. But you can find tutorials for this one online. It's once you get the visual, it's not so bad. But there's like a European thing, and then you do a Persian. I don't want to demo this one. Howard again.
Curious, you pointed out that there's new patterns coming out, even though Chainmail is old as
Yes.
time. Have you developed any of your own patterns?
My butterfly pattern, which is available for $35 a year. Yes, if you've been by my table and seen the butterfly earrings and the pendant that I have on the busts on my right, your left, that is a pattern. It took me about a year to perfect. Jane gave me the idea for a butterfly, and I was like, hey, I could do that. Well, that didn't work. And about 20 versions, and about a year later, I got it to work. And part of what was tricky about it was I got a couple that looked about right, but they didn't move. And that's one of those things, when I make a pattern, it's got to move. It's got to have flexibility, or it's not really a chain. Because if it's just a solid chunk, I might as well cast it. Send it to China, have them make 1 million for me. I'd rather do it so that it is a chain, you know what it is, it looks awesome, and it's available for $35 at my table. Who else has questions? You.
If you're just getting started and you want to use like the chainmail method to make jewelry, is there a recommended size you would say that's probably the easiest for a beginner?
Are you talking about the European chain pattern, that one?
I was just talking in general. But
Oh, okay. It really does depend on what you're making.
Okay.
Depending on what material you're using and what you're making, I honestly would mostly recommend 18 gauge wire. And that's what this is made out of. That's a 1 millimeter diameter wire. The gauge thing is one of those archaic things like inches and drams and pennyweights and all that. But that is a 1 millimeter wire. And that is big enough to be relatively easy to work with, but small enough that you can still do really cool stuff with it. And a lot of my bracelets, like this one, 18 gauge wire. I go smaller than that for stuff that needs to be smaller, and I go bigger for clasps, but that's generally where I go. Like you see this big box right here. This is all film canisters that have various sizes of rings and various colors in it. That's my palette, so to
You
speak.
get film canisters anymore.
Yeah, that's actually. There was a Wolf Camera in Athens where I lived. I'd go there about once a month and just clean them out, and they closed because, well, why would you pay that much for a camera? You can get it for half that on the internet, and you don't get hard sold. But, so they're gone, so I can't get the film canisters. And I go by Walmart every once in a while. Someone who hasn't gotten a digital camera will have dropped a Fuji can, but... And then there's jerks on Etsy who've been collecting them and selling them for $1 a piece. Handmade Etsy, where you can get handmade film canisters. That's why I don't have an Etsy page. Yes?
So with people starting out, where do you get the wire? I mean, I'm talking about like you, I know custom order from everything,
Yeah.
but let's say you're just starting out and you don't have all those contacts.
If you're just buying, if you want to buy rings and wire, the Ring Lord up in Canada is one of the best easy supply places because there's a ton of stuff they do. But I've heard a lot of things about their quality lately because I don't buy from them. I don't know, but I've had people telling me they're getting a lot of rings they have to throw away because they're not cutting them well. I've heard of Blue Buddha, but in a few weeks I'm going to start selling them too. On my website when I get it lined up and ready to go. And part of what I want to do when I get my website up for that is I want to be like, hey, you want to make a Byzantine chain? These are the rings you should be buying. You want to do European? Okay, you should be buying this size. If you have questions, you can let me know. And if you're an expert, you can just get whatever you want. But I want to be able to set it up so people are like, well, I want to try and learn full Persian chain. Okay, well, you need a 6 ratio ring, so this is what you should buy. So hopefully soon. I'm not a web guy, and I have to get help. You.
What's the most advanced technique or pattern you have?
My butterfly, because I invented it. That's truth of it is, when you invent something and no one else knows how to do it, that's pretty much your most advanced thing. Yes.
Where's your booth?
Art show. If you have been to the art show, it's around the corner here. It's on this floor. You walk up, you come off the elevators or the escalators. On the right is the Pop Art Gallery. That's comic books and graphic novels and cool stuff like that. On the left is the art show, which is the paintings, the jewelry, that sort of stuff. I'm in that one. If you go all the way to the back wall, hook a left, look for all the lights and the orange wood displays. That's me. I'm not hard to find. I'll be like, hey, remember me? I was selling you these earrings. You can buy them now. So, yeah, I'm not too hard to find. Yes?
Do you have any personal mountains that you're trying to climb, like making a shirt out of that smallest length? Or?
I'm not that crazy. Honestly, I've made a lot of shirts. I've never done them in those tiny rings because you wouldn't want to do it in this anyway because it's copper. And for jewelry, for this, it holds up. But a big shirt like that, the weight would pull the rings apart up here.
What is any kind of crazy thing that you just feel like is almost impossible, so you wanted to try it?
Honestly, with chainmail, I've pretty much done everything I've challenged myself to do. It's really a matter of coming up with new patterns and coming up with new ways to do it. And for me, I'm actually trying to build a machine that closes rings for me now. Which, if I can get that to work, oh boy. You know what I'm talking about. If I could just dump a bowl of rings in and have like half of them close. You saw the closing is what takes so much of the time. And I have an idea, and I'm not telling you about it. But if I can get this thing to work, I'll be able to pre-close a bunch of my rings and make the whole process faster. And I am working on some new bracelet patterns that you'll see next year at Dragoncon. But I don't want to talk too much about it because I want to surprise everybody. More questions. Who wants to know things? You in the back.
What's the average weight of a chain shirt that you make it?
What kind of material?
Whatever's most common.
Honestly, nowadays, most people who do LARPing and that sort of stuff use aluminum because it doesn't weigh anything. And it holds up. If you get a good like high magnesium alloy aluminum or aircraft aluminums, that sort of stuff, it's really strong. It'll hold up almost as well as steel, and if someone's beating you with a padded PVC pipe, it's not that important. And an aluminum shirt, have you made a shirt? Have you weighed one?
I haven't weighed it, but it's like...
It's under 20 pounds.
Yeah, it's like maybe my shirt maybe weighs 15 pounds, whereas like somebody else had galvanized steel.
First few shirts I made were galvanized steel, and they weigh like 50, 60, 70 pounds. Electric fence wire. That's how I got it.
Go to a hardware store and pick up the steel roll, and then pick up the aluminum roll.
But there's an important point about that. Don't use the aluminum fence wire you can get at Lowe's to make chainmail. It's too soft. You need aluminum that's alloyed. 5356 alloy aluminum from a welding shop works pretty well. Aircraft aluminum is the ideal.
Lock washers.
You could do that, but then you got to cut the lock washers, and I don't want to go to that much trouble. But if you can get the ratio right so they lay properly, you could do that. And when you say lock wash, you talking about like the key ring things or the? Oh no, yeah, lock
Sure, the
washers.
lock washers
They're already
are
split.
Cut.
I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I know what you mean now. I just
They're expensive though.
yeah, they are. I know there was a guy who was here for about the first 5 minutes and left who was wearing a thing that he has like a head and shoulder thing. That if I remember right, he's made that entirely out of spring steel fly fishing, like the little split rings. Like it's basically what your key chain looks like, but he weaves those together, and that's one way to do it. But those are expensive too. And I saw him here for a few minutes and he took off. But all right, use him as an example if you're still here. Yeah, you assemble pop tops the same way you assemble scale mail. It's not quite the same as chainmail, but it's very close, very similar. Since I'm not doing a demo and this is distracting, I'm